You know that person that you disagree with but don't even know how to approach because no matter what, it just seems like they want to be right instead of actually considering what they believe and why? I definitely know that feeling. And it's a big reason for why I started the Thoughtful Beetle channel in the first place. So often, I found my disagreements with other people came down to their thought process and was a lot less about the specific points they made and a lot more about how they approached information and ideas in the first place. So I wanted to formalize my thought processes and put it out there in a way that other people could see and that I could watch as well. And there's a couple of reasons for this, and one of the big ones is that I wanted to make sure my critical thinking could stand up to scrutiny and that I wasn't accidentally and unintentionally being that person who just wanted to be right. But in addition to that, I wanted to have videos of these so that other people could watch my process for critical thinking, and hopefully they could learn something from it and maybe become just a little bit more clear and honest in their thinking as well. So as the final part of our critical thinking toolkit, here are the top 10 things that I try to keep in mind and that I wish other people would try to keep in mind when debating or arguing or discussing topics or even just considering what to think about things in the first place. Now, I've already discussed the first 3 points in greater detail in previous videos, so I would highly recommend you go and check those out beforehand for more information. Links are down in the description below. Make sure you find and use good sources. This is the foundation that almost everything else is based on. Understanding what makes a good source and using them to inform your worldview allows you to have realistic and coherent ideas in the first place. If you learn to use the 5 C's, capability, conveys, current, corroboration, and consequential, and utilize sources that follow these rules, your views and thoughts are much more likely to be based in fact and grounded in reality. If you want to think or argue better, finding and using good sources is absolutely essential. Don't rely on common sense for what you believe. We all rely on common sense to some degree, but the problem with common sense is that it varies a lot from person to person or group to group, and certainly from one point in time to another, but is treated like it's universally true. This means that bad ideas can often become embedded in common sense and can stick around for a long time without ever being seriously examined or without having good reasons or evidence behind them. So don't just rely on common sense to believe something. Instead, believe things that have good evidence and reasons behind them. Common sense can sometimes be a useful shorthand, but it's one that should always be open to being questioned and should often be treated with suspicion. Assume ignorance or poor reasons over evil intent for those you disagree with. So frequently, we assume that people who disagree with us are evil or lying, but the simple fact is this is almost never the case. Very rarely do people actually want to be evil or truly intend to be bad. And if they hold views that you see as evil, it's likely that they haven't considered other points of view, or haven't been exposed to good reasons, or simply haven't thought the issue through very well. Or, of course, you could be the one who's wrong instead of them. But by not going in assuming that other people have evil intent, we not only don't misrepresent them, but it opens us up to understanding them to a greater degree. We can have dialogue with them, we can have a conversation, and maybe we can even change their minds. But by going in and assuming that other people are evil or lying to start off with, you're almost guaranteed not to get anywhere. Understand the other sides well enough to defend them for yourself. I'm consistently amazed at how frequently disagreements come down to someone simply not understanding the other side of an issue. So take the time to learn about other points of view that you disagree with. Truly understand what arguments other people use and why they use them in the first place. Doing so will clarify your own thinking, and it'll help you realize what you believe and why. And just as valuably, it might change your mind as you realize that the other side's arguments are more convincing than your own. Understand when it makes sense to believe things. It's your job to prove the things you believe, not to believe them until someone else disproves them. This point frequently goes unnoticed or is misunderstood, but it's certainly a cornerstone of critical thinking. It's often referred to as the burden of proof. Basically, if you make a claim, it's on you to prove it. You need to provide good reasons or evidence for it to be believed, and if you don't have those, then your claim should not be believed. At the same time, it is not the job of somebody else to disprove your claim in order for you to stop believing it, if you never had good evidence to support your claim in the first place. As an example, if I claim I can fly, then I need to demonstrate that I actually can fly before others should believe me. What shouldn't happen is that I claim I can fly, people believe me without me demonstrating my ability, and they continue to believe me until someone else proves that I can't fly. In this case, the burden of proof is incorrectly placed on someone else to disprove my claim, even though I didn't provide evidence for it in the first place. While the burden of proof seems to be obvious in a context like this, it is shockingly common in the real world for people to demand to be proven wrong, even when they have not provided any evidence for why their claim should be believed in the first place. So make sure you actually have good reasons to believe something, and aren't simply waiting to be proven wrong. Honestly ask yourself, how do I know this is true? This one involves a lot of self-reflection, and is extremely important for making sure what we believe is well supported and makes sense. Whenever you find yourself defending a position or making a claim, honestly ask yourself, how do I know this is true? Where did I hear this information in the first place? And what process did I use to determine it was true? And most importantly, how do I know that process is a good process? You might be surprised at how frequently you realize the things that you immediately assumed were true are not based on anything solid after all. I know I frequently am. A lot of the things that we know are something we just heard once or twice and internalized and aren't really supported by anything solid. By asking ourselves honestly, how do I know this is true? We can often reveal these inconsistencies. Honestly ask yourself, how would I know if I was wrong? Just as important as asking yourself how you know something is asking yourself how you would unknow something. We should always be open to changing our minds if compelling reasons are given. And key to that is understanding what would falsify the beliefs you currently have. So take the time to think about what evidence would convince you that what you think is wrong, and how you would go about disproving the beliefs that you currently have. If you honestly can't think of any way to falsify the beliefs that you have, then you might not have any good reason for holding those beliefs in the first place, and may instead be just assuming that they are true. A good example for why this point is important is religion. No matter what religion, or lack thereof, you're a part of, the vast majority of the rest of the world thinks you are wrong. Which means, at minimum, the overwhelming majority of people are incorrect about some of their most deeply held and fundamental beliefs and opinions. If you expect them to be open-minded to your way of thinking, you need to make sure you are at least open-minded enough to understand if you are wrong. Make sure it's possible to change your mind. Be consistent in your views and accept the consequences of what you think is true. Consistency in your views is key to honest critical thinking. If you accept an argument or bit of evidence in one case, then you need to accept that same argument or bit of evidence in all cases that are not meaningfully different. Or at the very least, you should reconsider if that argument or evidence should be convincing to you in the first place. But beyond not having double standards, you also should make sure that you follow through on what you believe and the things it affects. If, for example, you believe that the Earth is flat, then you can't believe that gravity works the way scientists think it works. Probably closer to home for most, if you believe everything happens for a reason, you need to accept that things that turn out horribly happen for a reason, just as much as things that turn out well do. This process often gets quite uncomfortable, and you may well realize having consistent views means having to accept things you don't like, or maybe don't even think are true. In that case, consistency can also mean that you stop holding beliefs because you don't have good, consistent reasons to have them. Accepting the consequences of what you believe can be hard, but it is necessary in order to be consistent. Learn to say, I don't know, way more often. When I put all the previous points together, I often realize I don't know nearly as much as I think I know. I might not know how I determined that was true, or what the other side thinks and why they think it, or even if I'm being internally consistent. I might not even know if I am remembering stuff correctly. And uncomfortable though that is, it's also okay. It's okay to admit that you don't know when you actually don't know something. We shouldn't defend a position just because we're emotionally attached to it. Instead, it's all right to say, I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. Don't dig in with certainty when the evidence warrants uncertainty. I find the most honest answer oftentimes is, I don't know. And being able to say that is essential for true critical thinking. Put in more effort than you expect others to put in. Let's be honest. Finding good sources, questioning evil intent and common sense, understanding the other side of arguments and exploring what we actually think and why, it takes effort. It takes a lot of effort. And we need to be aware of that and accept the fact that it's worth it anyways. Most people won't take the time to find good sources and honestly explore what they think and why. I wish they would, but I also know that they probably won't. So we need to be willing to do what other people won't. We need to go that extra mile to make sure that our thinking is as clear and useful as possible. And hopefully, that can inspire other people to do the same. And maybe we can even change minds that might not have been reached otherwise. Of course, there's more. But these are the 10 main things I try to do to be as clear and consistent with my thinking as possible. It takes a lot of effort, and oftentimes I don't fully live up to what I think I should be doing with these. But I find them to be extremely useful, and they help me navigate the world and more accurately assess information and ideas. Ultimately, I find these tools yield good results, and hopefully they can prevent you and me from becoming that closed-minded person. Thanks for watching. Let me know if there's anything you think I left out, or if you find any flaws in the concepts that I've laid out here. And I'll see you next time.